Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're trying to pull this together from a unorganized scramble of pulling data together.
Lots of data, lots of notes, kind of all over the place, a bit of a mad grab of stuff. But mostly today, Dad, we are going to be talking about some Packers-related news that has come out of the owners' meetings. It is lying season, so we're going to be going over what both Brian Gutekunst...
We're not trying to lie to you. We're not trying to lie to you.
They are. But we are going to be today talking a little bit initially about, we actually got some official news on some Packers coaching staff movement, so we're going to talk about that briefly. One new top 30 visit just to quickly discuss and what that means for the Packers maybe going forward. And then we're also going to mostly be talking about Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur at the owners' meetings had a lot to say about a lot of different things. And we're going to play everyone's favorite game, big deal, little deal, no deal, as to what these quotes actually mean. Is it all just BS? Are they actually giving us hints as to what their approach might be this year? Is there anything to glean from these, these comments, these brief asides, how these things are said, et cetera, et cetera? But yeah. So we're going to be going over all of that. I think there is definitely some interesting stuff, some interesting tidbits that both Brian Gutekunst, Packers GM, and Matt LaFleur dropped during this, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, maybe some messages sent to some players inside the team, maybe some subliminal shots fired. But anyway, we're going to have time to get to all of that. Before we do, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear here today, give us a follow, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be doing an episode every single week for the rest of the off season. So we'll be, deeply in diving the draft, and then going into all those draft prospects once the draft happens. 3 Thursdays from now, I think it is. So that's really exciting coming up. Beyond, right?
Just like 2.5 weeks away.
3 weeks, I think 3 weeks away, but either way,
3 weeks from yesterday.
Is that? Oh man, it's coming up even sooner. I can't wait. But yeah, we'll be talking about those prospects as they come through. We'll be talking about, OTAs off season, how we think players are going to line up, what the rest of the division is looking like, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, leave a review, subscribe, et cetera, et cetera. Follow us on Blue Sky for updates on when new episodes come out. Other Packers related news, whether that's hirings, firings, top 30 visits, et cetera, et cetera. One-stop shop and everything Titletown, and on Blue Sky, that's at Father-Son Packers. So check that out. But yeah, Dad, let's just get into it. And let's start off with, like I mentioned, a bit of news. The Packers did officially announce 9 different coaching changes, which I think is more than we expected. Obviously, they're the big ones. DeMarcus Covington being hired as the defensive line coach and run game coordinator. Having that run game coordinator attached is probably something that maybe wasn't necessarily known, but that is an official, thing now. I got these all from Lombardi Time Brews, I believe it was. But he's hired as defensive line coach and run game coordinator. Luke Getsy was hired as a senior assistant. That is his official title. We knew he would be involved with the team in some capacity, but he is going to be a senior assistant. Previously had been with the Packers, and then had been the offensive coordinator for the Raiders and Bears the past few years. So comes in, brings some experience. Matt LaFleur talked a little bit about that during his time with the press at the owners meeting about how he's bringing in lots of new ideas, and it's really nice to have him back. Corey Harkey hired as special teams quality control coach. Jeremiah Colon hired as offensive assistant. That's the minority fellowship that the Packers have had going for a few years now. Jeff Koons hired as the defensive assistant. Jamiel Lett hired as defensive quality control coach. Sean Duggan promoted to linebackers coach. That was one that, with Campanile moving on to, I believe it was Jacksonville as the defensive coordinator. That was going to be a big spot to fill, as he was really important and integral in the development of...
Sure seemed like it was going well.
Yeah, and the development of Edgerrin Cooper last year.
That would be the biggest loss of the year.
Player
or coach.
We're going to see, because we also have Sean Mannion promoted to quarterbacks coach. And that's going to be a big loss there. I'm not sure how much, not having Clements around is going to matter, but it might end up mattering a lot. So you can make the argument not having, I know, right? Let's hope not. But Tom Clements, he was a really integral piece in the development of Jordan Love, and hopefully Mannion can continue to carry on that one. But that was another important move as well. And then Connor Lewis was moved to pass game specialist / game manager. I believe he had previously been with the quarterbacks prior to this, but those are the 9 moves. Dad, any thoughts on any of those? Like you said, it sounds like you think that the biggest one could be losing Campanile. I feel like the biggest one might be losing Clements, but you can make an argument for either.
Yeah, so we have like 2 possible big losses. We'll see, and possible 1 big gain.
We'll see with Covington. I hope he's going to be able to, step in and I mean, they certainly seem to think he'll be doing a better job than Rebrovich because there was a lot of Rebrovich getting thrown under the bus at these
we got plenty
meetings.
of great players. They just need to be coached up or
Yeah.
whatever. However,
they didn't say it quite that badly.
No,
it was not.
However,
quite
they're actually
that bad.
wording it. That's what they mean.
It definitely felt like that was what they meant. But we'll be talking about that in a little bit. I feel like Mannion's a guy that a lot of people are high on around the league, but this is going to be his first. This is going to be by far his biggest coaching opportunity so far. I mean, to jump straight to quarterback coach is a pretty big jump, but he clearly has a lot of fans throughout the league. A lot of people were, in line for his services as a coach after he retired from playing. And hopefully he can, help Jordan Love take, another step in his development this coming year. So that's going to be a big one to watch. And he has massive shoes to fill with Clements retiring. So that's big as well.
It seems like he's the guy that people have been, even while he was still playing, projecting to be a coach when he was done, and the Packers are going to be the first ones to test it out.
Yeah, I guess so. I will say, hopefully for that, he's ready for the job, and it seems like everyone's excited about him, getting this opportunity. And it's a big opportunity for him as well, being able to, step in for Clements, learn from Clements for a year, and then, be the quarterback coach for, one of the up and coming quarterbacks in the league. I mean, it's an awesome
future 4-time MVP.
Sure, why not? And it's and it's an awesome opportunity for him as well. So that'll be exciting. Other Packers related news: we have one new top 30 visit, and that is wide receiver Matthew Golden out of Texas. He is, widely considered to be at least in the top 4 receivers in this draft, if you include Hunter. Generally considered to be, ran the fastest 40 at the combine of any of the receivers, ran a 4.29. Big speed guy. Reminds me a little bit of Terry McLaurin coming out of college. Plays can take the top off the defense, has really smooth routes, good hands, a little bit smaller though. So that's definitely something to, think about, where it's like, would they go as small? I believe it's like 5'11", 188. Is that what he is? Ended up testing.
It's under 190.
Yeah. So he would be smaller than Jaden Reed. Would be, having 2 small guys in the receiver room, I think would be, something that's like, is that something the Packers would be open to doing? I think he's a talented enough player where you just kind of be like, yep, that's, it is what it is. You're going to go a little smaller, but you're going to have another good receiver, and you just take your lumps where you will in terms of size, and it's worth it for the quality of player that he is. But so they're having him in for a visit. That's the only new 31. We talked about the rest of them last week, so you can go back and listen to that if you want to hear our thoughts on the other top 30 visits. Dad, any thoughts on Golden coming in?
Yeah, so I did watch some of his tape this week. I liked it more than I expected to, because I'm a little bit
he's fun
nervous about him, because this is his only year of really big production. He had like 900 and some yards this year. Previous years were like 419 and 584, so a lot less.
Yeah.
And his like yards per route run amongst like qualifying players only like 56th in the nation.
Yeah, and this was his only season at Texas, spent the last 2 years at Houston before this, so transferred in this coming year. Was not, I don't think was viewed as like this big time transfer guy, but then ended the season just really, really strong in the college football playoff. And we talked about last week though, Dad, I know his yards per route run aren't good, but we looked at it and it's like, well, the teams don't really seem to care as much about yards per route run as, at least as the pundits and the national media seem to. So definitely a guy I think that's going to go higher than people expect in this draft. I would not be surprised to see him go top 20, top 15, especially when he ran that 4.29.
Yeah, so he didn't have a full athletic profile, so he didn't have a RAS score, but 99.6 percentile 40 for wide receivers.
And I don't know if people thought he was going to be that fast, but he is fast. And I think
everybody was expecting,
Bond to run faster.
Bond to be the guy who's going to run in the 4.2s.
Who the Packers also had in on a visit. So, yes, 2 Texas receivers now in on a visit. Just something to keep an eye on. All right, though. Moving on to the meat and potatoes. Oh, actually, we do have a couple more pieces of news, and these are more NFL-wide news. But we have some rule change stuff. The tush-push decision has been tabled until May. It sounds like it was a tie. It was like 16-16 in the voting.
Yeah, and I was reading, I think Diane Rossini is expecting it to get maybe reworded, maybe get canceled before this coming year.
I guess we'll see. Beyond that, first downs will be called by camera, and the chain gang will be, a backup, which is, I think, a long time coming. We'll see how accurate it is.
Technology for ages.
Yeah, hopefully it's accurate. I mean, I could maybe foresee some being like, okay, well, they couldn't see the ball with the cameras, so what are we going to do? I guess we'll see. Overtime changed in the regular season so that both teams get a chance to possess the ball, but there's only a 10-minute time limit. So it's pretty much the same as the playoffs, except you're not going to go past 10 minutes. And then...
Yeah, so can you get a 10-minute scoring drive?
Yeah, and then they eliminated the automatic first down for defensive holding. That was one that was proposed, but it was also tabled, I believe. I don't think it was.
I think it was. Oh, you think it was tabled?
I believe that one was tabled. I don't think that. I think they're coming back.
The Lions had wanted to eliminate the automatic first downs.
Yeah, but that I don't think is that one. It sounds like is not projected to happen. And so those are the big major rule changes. Oh, and the other was on kickoffs. They are now going to come out to the 35-yard line as opposed to the 30. So we're going to have more kickoff returns, it sounds like. And so that was, and they're also, I think, looking at possibly changing the onside kick stuff, but I don't think that that's projected to happen this offseason. There are discussions around it, but I don't think that's expected to happen. But the onside kick one is definitely, or not the onside kick, the kickoff one being out to the 35, a lot more returns now. I think.
They've decided that the kickoffs have become so boring. They needed to do something to incentivize kicking into the zone.
Well, they pretty much should have done this. I mean, this is what it was in the XFL. It was always the 35, and then they moved it to the 30 for no reason.
Just because they wanted to be different. It's like, we don't want to copy a lower, I think they were lower just, league.
They were I think they were just like concerned about, I'm a little bit concerned about them going to the 35 because, 10 yards and you're practically in field goal range. But yes, it will increase the number of kickoffs. So, I mean, that's definitely something that I think everyone kick returns. Returned kickoffs, I guess is the way I should have said it. But I think it's something that everyone wants. I mean, no one wants to just see, touchbacks every single kick. They want to see this become an actual football play. And I think this is another step towards that. So that's good. But anyway, now that we've gotten through all of that, on to our favorite game, which is around this time of the year. The coaches and GMs come to the league meetings and say a bunch of stuff. And it is our job to parse whether or not any of it means anything. And so I have a bunch of different quotes / it's said like paraphrases of what these, Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst said during their interviews with the national and local media. And I'm going to ping them off of you, Dad, and you're going to tell me whether or not these things are a big deal, little deal, no deal, flat out lie. You can say whatever you want, but we'll start with big deal, little deal, no deal, and if you want to ad lib a little bit, I suppose there's no way for me to stop you. Let's start with you
can't mute my mic for me.
Oh, I guess I can actually. I do have a little button here.
I've already told about this power.
I'll just fill in what you're saying with AI afterwards. But anyway, let's start with
not already.
Exactly. There's no way of knowing. We don't do video. So, I mean, even if we did do video, there's no way of knowing. We could both be AI. This could just all be made up. This is all a simulation. Anyway, but let's start with looking at, I think, the most important piece of news surrounding the Packers offseason right now, which has been talked to death. But on the topic of Jaire Alexander, let's just, start with the high heat. This was what Brian Gutekunst had to say about this. I'm paraphrasing here, but he pretty much said, we invested a lot in Jaire, and if he's not on the team helping them win games, they, quote, want to get something back for that investment, end quote. Big deal, little deal, no deal, I guess in the vein of, does this make you feel differently about the odds that he's on the team this coming year? Because I think this was the number one, that's not what I expected him to say. I was expecting, we're working something out and we thank Jaire for the years of service and, he's been a great Packer, but we just want to move into something where, we all get something out of this. And he did say something about, we want all sides to be happy, but I think idea that they would not.
We want all sides to be happy on our terms.
Yeah. But the idea that it seems like cutting him is off the board. Based on that quote, or do you think he's just lying? What are your thoughts, though? I'll throw it over to you. Big deal, little deal, no deal. What are your thoughts?
So I'll give this a little deal. I mean, my first feeling was like they shouldn't just cut him, and if they can't get a good trade partner, then get him for 8 games. And if four of those games are playoff games, then it's worth the money you pay him for the year. I mean, you are by having him with you, you're paying part of next year as well, so it's more than just what you are paying extra this year, but I mean, it's not like he's underperforming when he's on the field. Now, the question is, has his opinion actually changed? I feel like no. I think the most likely scenario is he's just telling other teams, send me your offers.
Give me a little more. Yeah, we're going to need a little bit more.
We're not giving him away. We're not going to cut him. We're not going to get him off the street for nothing. This is not going to happen.
But do you think that's true? Do you think they're actually not going to? So if they cut him, it's save $7 million this year and $10 million next year if they cut him, near the draft.
Yes.
And they asked him about, is the draft like a deadline? He's like, well, certainly we'd like to have something figured out by then, but these things are. Yeah. He said something like these things are fluid, like GM speak. I'm a little bit surprised that it sounds like I mean, before I would say, and that's not an original take, but I was like 98% sure that he was not going to be on the team this year, 99% sure he was not going to be on the team this year, and now I'm like 85, 90, where I'm like, oh, maybe he's still on the team. The other thing was like they have, and this was reported before the owners' meetings, was like they have not approached him about a contract restructure, and he will not entertain a contract restructure. So that's not even been thought of, which was part of the reason where I was like, okay, they're going to cut him then if they haven't even talked to him about this. But now it seems like it's like, well, they don't want to let him go for nothing, they're saying, and I just don't see a scenario where other teams aren't like trying to call that bluff. I don't know. I mean, what's the most you think they could get for him right now? A sixth, a fifth? I'm just trying to think back to like the Jalen Ramsey deal, like when it was clear that the Rams had to move off of him. And
what did they get?
I believe that they got hit a fifth for him. Oh, actually, the Rams dealt Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins for tight end Hunter Long and a third-round pick. So
I think they'll trade him if they get a fourth.
I think they'd take a fifth. The amount of money that they'd save is just so enticing, I think. And with him, only playing 50% of games.
So he's playing 50% of the games, and you're paying him double that per game. It's like a $34 million contract.
It's tough, but anyway, I don't know. So it sounds like you think it's a little deal. You don't think it's anything crazy. You don't think it's anything. He may
also want to control where he goes.
He doesn't really have that option though. He's got 2 more years on his deal. Like, it's not like he's like up for an extension where it's like,
no, by trading him instead of cutting him.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but I don't think Jaire Alexander wanting to have a say where he goes, I don't think that affects anything. I mean, it's not like, because like when guys are up for a new contract, then they can have some say because they're like, oh, I won't sign an extension there. You'll only get me for a year. He's got this year and another year on his contract. Like, I don't think any team could just be like, we'll just keep you for the contract you have then. Like,
no, I mean, they don't want to cut him, so he has the freedom to go to any team he wants.
I don't think they care about that. I think I don't think that's a factors into their thinking.
Yeah, watch him play a full season next year for
Minnesota,
the Lions,
the Lions,
Vikings.
Yeah. But no, I don't think that ever really factors into their calculus on that.
It shouldn't really, if you're trying to get the best deal.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's that big a deal. But anyway, let's move on to our next piece. And this was the second most interesting thing that I thought they mentioned in this, and that was when they were asked about offensive line combinations, and Gutekunst briefly alluded to this and was like, this is about Jordan Morgan, first round pick last year for the Packers, played a handful of games at right guard, 1 game at left guard, and missed a majority of the season with a shoulder injury, missed a majority of the offseason with a shoulder injury, but ended up getting surgery on that shoulder. They were asking about, offensive line configurations, and Brian Gutekunst was like, yeah, Jordan Morgan is going to, have a ability to compete at a few different spots, left tackle, right guard. But then Matt LaFleur was like much more definitive about, he's going to be competing with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Big deal, little deal, no deal. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know how much I put into this. I mean, that's what they wanted, but they kind of gave up on him competing for left tackle last year pretty quickly. I know he didn't play in the preseason because he had the shoulder injury, and then he didn't play. He played 186 snaps on offense in the regular season last year before being, out for the season. 0 of those snaps were a tackle. 185 at guard and 1 at like inline tight end.
I see what you're saying, because you're right. They pretty much immediately went to him at guard. Their actions
last year, suggested they.
I think the
didn't
question
have an
is,
appetite for him at
tackle. And I mean the question is really, who is better at their position, Rasheed Walker or Sean Ryan? And then the follow-up question is, who is more likely to be on the team next year, Rasheed Walker or Sean Ryan? And so if you're planning for 2026. I think there's no question you try Jordan Morgan at tackle as long as you can, because I think Rasheed Walker is going to command at least $20 million, probably more, in free agency next year when he's, an unrestricted free agent. Because, I mean, Dan Moore for the Steelers, who's like, I would say maybe a little bit worse, maybe around the same as Rasheed Walker, got $20 million, like easy peasy first day of free agency. And a lot of people were surprised, but that's just what tackles, even average tackles, go for these days, especially guys who can play on the left. Ryan, on the other hand, now I'm not saying I expect him to be back, especially with the guard market exploding, but he's going to be more retainable than Walker is. And so, and I would say, it was similar, but you could make the argument Sean Ryan at right guard had a better overall year than Walker did at left tackle. I mean, Walker didn't have a great year last year. You for the audio listeners, you made a face. You did not seem to agree.
So I'm looking at, let's take it for everyone. PFF pass block grades. Walker, 80.1. It's like near elite. Ryan, 65.
And run blocking?
58.7. Walker's run block is also not good. 53.5 for Walker, 58.7 for Ryan.
Is like very abysmal.
Right, so his run block has been bad. Ryan's not much better. And Morgan's is also, is 56.2, and his pass blocking is much worse. It was in guard instead of out of tackle. But the one thing that Walker did last year, he had a fair number of penalties, 9 of them. But I have to look at this, whether it cleaned up as the year went on. Ryan also had 7 penalties. I mean, the argument is if Morgan can succeed at tackle,
more valuable.
They save more money on the cap by having him on the rookie contract. Now, I will say it's a big deal because I believe that they are really going to try him there.
Yeah.
Is it going to succeed? I'm putting that down as a little deal because so far, I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot of chance.
It's not like he's had much opportunity there, though.
Yeah, so we'll.
I think if we're talking about the offseason last year, I think if you told them, hey, Sean Ryan's going to be a average guard, like pretty like an average right guard, fine a right guard, I think they would have let Morgan try more at tackle last year.
Yeah, I think Ryan probably outperformed what they expected.
Yeah, I think they expected Ryan to be, kind of a disaster, and he was serviceable. He was fine. He was decent.
Previous year,
he had been really bad. So
his pass blocking was 42.
Yeah, because and I think if you had told them, like, give him a crystal ball and been like, hey, Ryan's going to be like an average guard, I think they would have like had a more earnest competition for Morgan at left tackle. And also, I think last year they probably just wanted to. I think maybe early on they realized they were overloading Morgan a little bit too much by having him do 2 positions at once, and then they were like, you know what, let's just. And they've talked about that. Like they're like during the rookie minicamp, we're going to try him at a couple positions and see which one he does better at and which one we need more at, and then we're going to stick him at one position for the rest of the offseason program. And they decided it was guard. Maybe it's something similar this year where like for a bigger part of the OTAs, for the OTAs, they're going to try him at left tackle, see how it goes for, that week or so. And then in training camp, just have him, stick at one position again. Maybe that'll be the approach. But
here's a question.
I want him to win. I think ideally he wins the left tackle job. That's what you hope happens.
That is the best case scenario. That he is just so good. He wins the left tackle job, at which point Walker's like, Trade me?
Yeah, I was going to say Walker. If I was Walker, I would request a trade if I did not win the left tackle job, because that affects so much money that he's going to get the following year. I mean, it's a little bit different because Josh Nijman didn't play well his last year with the Packers, but it's very similar where Walker took the starting job from him, and all of a sudden Josh Nijman went from a guy who was probably going to get like 15 to 18, and then he kind of became an afterthought a bit in free agency, ended up signing with the Panthers and played a little bit, But yeah, so if I'm Walker, I'm requesting a trade if I don't win the starting job, especially when I played pretty well there on like no money for like the past like 3 years.
Yeah, right. 7th round pick money.
But anyway, what were you going to say before?
Talk about like a bargain for a starter.
Oh, fantastic bargain. I mean, him and Tom, that was a great draft. But anyway, what were you going to say before I rudely interrupted you?
Have you heard anything about how Morgan's shoulder surgery went?
Has not come up.
I haven't seen any updates anywhere.
Has not come up.
He had it after he was shut down for the year.
Yeah, had it in season. So I assume it's fine. I guess I don't know.
It's already been like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. If it's still a problem,
exactly when it happened.
I feel like we would have heard if it was an issue. And they wouldn't be bringing up like, oh, like we think he's going to compete at left tackle if like they were still uncertain about his availability. Oh, the one other thing I forgot to mention about Jaire Alexander, do you see on his social media?
No, I have missed this.
Him and Xavier McKinney are working out together.
Ooh. And he also welcomed Hobbs to the team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, So I don't know what's going on with that man. Like it's an absolute mystery.
He's like eager to play. Eager to play with these guys.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but I guess we'll see in the coming weeks.
I guess my short take on it is the team is better this year with Jaire on the team.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if he only plays half the year.
Yeah. And it honestly might
just put him in bubble wrap until week 12.
So, well, Andy Herman was
ready
suggesting
for the stretch run in the playoffs.
Andy Herman was saying, like, just play him on third downs. Like, just
heard him say,
don't have him play on running downs at all, just to keep him healthy.
Just obvious passing downs.
In my opinion, it just when you try and bubble wrap a guy, it never works. Like it's already you've already lost.
I tripped on the bubble wrap and broke my arm.
It's just like I just don't think it ends up helping. Like, there's not.
It's like the Packers trying to both win and not have anybody play in the last week of the season against the Bears.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to go halfway. Yeah. But anyway, I have another quote, another big deal, little deal, no deal. This one, I have a couple pieces to this, so bear with me. So we all know Brian Gutekunst talked about, earlier in the offseason as the season came to an end, pretty much talked about, they need to have more urgency. And a lot of people thought they were talking about the approach to free agency, et cetera, et cetera. But Brian Gutekunst pretty much said, no, that's not what I meant. Actually, I did not mean us. The quote that I have from the offseason, or from the meetings this past week, quote, the urgency comment was really more for our team, for our organization to understand what the expectations are, end quote. And I just want to take that, and I want to pair it with a quote from Tucker Kraft from earlier in the offseason, from pretty much, it was like the exit interviews after they lost to the Eagles. And here are a couple quotes from Tucker Kraft from the end of the season. Quote, the whole last few games we played, ... you could kind of feel what was brewing for us, end quote. And then, quote, as a team, we need to wake up, end quote. One, big deal, little deal, no deal. Two, who are they talking about? like who are these subliminal shots at? Like
who has to wake up?
Clearly, I think both of those quotes are directed at a similar subset of people or the same person, and I just want to know who. I have no suggestion of who that is. It's clear, but it kind of seems like it's directed at someone, right?
Or is it the team as a whole?
But it's never everyone. I think it's clearly.
But it seems like
there are a few people who both Brian Gutekunst and Tucker Kraft feel could be giving more, and I just wonder who that is.
Yeah, it could, but I don't think it's just one person. I think it's like, we're just kind of feeling it. Like, it's good. We don't need to work any harder because we're already on top of the feel themselves a little bit. Maybe that's what they're referring to. I don't know.
Okay, and then big deal, little deal, no deal. Your thoughts on those series of quotes?
Well, it became pretty obvious that urgency didn't apply to Gutekunst's approach because it is unchanged.
Well, he did actually also say, he said, I thought we were pretty urgent. He said, like, later in the
we
interview.
Did spend in the top 10.
Yeah. And I mean, he's not wrong. They spent a lot of money. They did.
Yes, but you would say that urgency applies to short-term outcomes.
It applies to ceiling chasing, in my opinion.
Implies short-term ceiling chasing.
Yeah.
Because it's urgency. It's urgent because it's short-term. He didn't do anything. He did the same style and timeline as he always does. The only free agents he signed were guys coming off of the rookie contracts.
I don't have a problem with that. Else. I know you do.
No. You could say that you're looking at the horizon, the longer horizon to keep the team competitive, and possibly also looking for less injury risk, though Hobbs has had his injuries as well.
So here's the thing. I obviously would like some, I think the two things you would say, we talked about this a bunch, but we can briefly touch on it again. Urgency, pass rush, wide receivers. Who was available that they could get? Do you want to pay DK Metcalf? The Metcalf one I will listen to, but you're trading a second round pick and paying him $30 million a year. When you have to pay Tom this coming year, when you have to see what you want to do with your other receivers in the coming years, you're already paying, you're going to be paying a left guard, a center, and a right tackle top money. You're paying your quarterback top money. You're paying a corner top money, a safety top money, an edge rusher top money, a defensive tackle top money.
So what's the problem?
I mean, fair enough.
We need some more.
But the question is, like, would you want to trade a second and pay him $30 million a year? That's the only guy that was available, because, like, otherwise it's Diggs coming off an ACL. It's T. Higgins was not available. None of these edge rushers were available. Khalil Mack went back to the Chargers. Trey Hendrickson is not going to get traded. Devontae Adams wanted to go to the Rams. And you can say, like, well, they should have at least called, because the report was they didn't even call on Devontae Adams. But I don't think he was interested in coming back to the Packers, based on everything that is, transpired. Exactly. So I just don't see what urgent moves were available for them. Is like what could they have even done that would have fulfilled those?
How would you feel about the offseason if instead of signing Aaron Banks,
they signed Josh Sweat?
Traded for and signed Josh Sweat or traded for DK Metcalf?
Okay, the Metcalf
Aaron Banks was their big money signing.
You're losing a second round pick is the other thing, and you're blowing $30 million a year. Which
what about Josh Sweat then?
You could make the argument to me to Josh Sweat, but the counter argument is like, well, you're paying for one season of production, which, like, maybe it works out, but I don't know. It would be urgent. It would be urgent. It would definitely be. It would definitely.
So I guess my whole it's like, you could argue, and it's easy to argue, that they've made the right decision for a 4-year horizon.
Yeah.
Did he change his?
They changed their Super Bowl odds at all, or their process at all?
But he didn't change he didn't change his process at all.
Based on
respect to the urgency comment.
No, and what he said was that urgency comment was about the team. It was not about him.
It was not directed to me, right?
He's like,
so I guess he admitted
you guys misunderstood. I was actually talking.
I'm calling
to the team.
out. I'm calling somebody out, but I'm not going to say who.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is like, who are they talking about? But anyway,
I wonder if it's like they felt like, okay, you guys are just kind of goofing around and not taking this seriously enough.
But I didn't feel like.
But is that the implication?
I think so, based on both those quotes. But did it ever feel that way throughout the course of the season, outside of like the time when Dobbs just didn't show up to practice? Like, besides that, like, did it at any point feel like that?
Like calling out Dobbs. But I don't know, who else. And I didn't see to be any like grousing on the sidelines either.
Yeah, no, it never seemed like there was
caught. That's like somebody like yelling at somebody, "Get your head in the game."
Yeah, there was never any like big blowups on the sideline. There was never any. I don't know. But anyway, I have. Speaking of, we already talked a little bit about pass rush. Might as well transition our way over to that quote. Brian Gutekunst on the pass rush. I actually have a direct quote here. Quote: I think we can do everything we need to do with the pass rush through the players we have on our roster right now. End quote. Talked about, both being in the second year of the scheme and individual like players just improving. He also talked about, if the draft happens to bring more players where they can add, that would be, something that they would be, open to taking players there. It's not like they're not going to take edge rushers, but doesn't feel like they need to chase, I think was the verb he ended up saying, chase edge rushers.
He did say chase.
And he also talked about
reaching in my mind or trading up for somebody.
He also talked about, he thought they had good moments in pass rush last year, just lacked consistency. And then also said, if you've shown it in moments, like, then it's in there and you just like, it's there. And that if you've proven it once, like, that you can do it. And so he believes that because they had games where they had really good pass rush, they just need to, be more consistent and, play like that every single game rather than a game here and there. And, to his credit, they had a couple good games rushing the passer, the game against the Seahawks, the game against the Texans, the game against the Titans. Now, what do all those teams have in common? They have terrible offensive lines. But at the same time, they did have some flashes last year in the pass rush. Big deal, little deal, no deal. What are your thoughts on that quote?
Well, first I'll say, like, the philosophy that if you can do it once, you can do it regularly. I don't know how true a statement that is.
Yeah.
Is that reality? Can you, play at your 90% ability 90% of the time?
No.
And so that's kind of what, and that is a very pervasive opinion. If you've done it once, why can't you do it all the time? So I guess every blind squirrel can be a star.
Yeah. Broken clock can be right all the time. But you did look at, though.
I do say, if you're looking for some hopium, if you're looking at this, you're saying,
are they really going to be able to do it with these guys?
Anything. He's not going to change anything.
Okay,
so
well, before that,
though,
before you get to that, though, I want to say, do you think this means they're not going to do anything?
Yeah, I not necessarily.
I don't think so either. I don't think it has. It doesn't make me think anything different about their approach. I think this is just simply this. I think is smoke. This I think is just like, oh, we don't need to take an edge rusher. Like we don't need to take
don't snipe us. We're not going to take an edge
whoever.
rusher.
Like we can take whatever position we want, and we'll feel great about it. Don't worry about us. Like we'll be all right. It's like no, you're just trying to muddy the waters.
There's some smoke and mirrors going on here about not giving away who they're interested in. Now I do believe when he says he's not going to like. If by chase he means reach, because they're not going to go off their board, as it were, for when they pick somebody. But I think if the edge, and he probably would have said it, except he doesn't want to give that much away. If the right player is there, we'll take him.
But here's the thing. Here's the other thing. Has any GM ever reached? Like, no one has ever come out after a draft and been like, oh, yeah, like, we had him way lower, but we just really needed an edge, and we had to take him. No one has ever said that, ever, ever, ever. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, he was really high on our board.
He's our guy.
We would have taken him with a top 10 pick. We couldn't believe he was still there. No one has ever. That is what every single GM says. Every single guy.
And Gutekunst has said that same thing.
Exactly.
We were going to take Amari Rodgers earlier.
We would have taken him. We would have taken him in the second. We were shocked that he was there in the third.
We were happy he was still there.
Yeah. No one has ever reached ever. If you ask a GM, that every single guy has been the top guy on the board. Like, yeah. So
I thought you were going to say, does any GM believe a word of this anyway? It's all meaningless.
It's all nonsense.
It's just like kabuki theater, and everybody's saying, lying to each other, and everybody knows you're lying. And so, what's the point?
Exactly.
I mean,
it's
if we
all
don't believe
it, But that my point is just like it's like every GM says they've never reached ever. But so who actually knows? But anyway, I do realistically think that they're not going to. I mean, they've invested so much in the edge rusher position already. I think that they're not going to feel like they have to take an edge. But I don't think it precludes them from taking one. And I do think it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. But you did say you had some, if they were to stick with the edge rusher and defensive line group they have, it might not be the end of the world.
Right. So we've talked about this, our own opinions, that we didn't necessarily agree with this philosophy because then you're just putting all your eggs in one basket of how you're going to fix the problem. But if you look at last year, and so I broke it down like before the bye versus after the bye, how the edge rushers and the interior defensive linemen performed in pass rush. So after the bye, well, let's start with before the bye. Before the bye, Brenton Cox didn't have any snaps. He didn't start playing till week 11.
Which is a question mark in and of itself. Why was he not playing? But anyway, go ahead.
So after the bye, his win rate was 12th best in the league. And his pass rush productivity, which is like win rate, but then weighted for more impactful.
Sacks are worth more than a pressure, which
and I don't know I haven't actually looked to see what the formula is, how much more a sack is worth, but he was third in the league.
Yeah.
Rashawn Gary, before the bye, win rate 72nd in the league. After the bye, 15th.
Yep. And then just down the list, it's more and more.
And Lucas Van Ness. Everybody's favorite whipping boy. And we've talked about how he did before the bye, 101st. After the bye, 98th in the league in win rate.
So he went up 3 spots. Is that what it was?
No, 101st to 98th. 28th.
Ah, okay. Well, there we go. That's a lot. When you said 98th with such emphasis, I was like,
the problem
was not that much better.
I looked at Enagbari was 98th before the bye.
It was such
so I was looking at that number.
He went from 101st to 98th.
The big reveal.
Top 100.
The big reveal of how I am looking at the wrong cell in the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That's the true big reveal here.
So it was 101st to, what was it again?
101st to 28th.
That's a big.
And then his PRP, the pass rush productivity, 119th before the bye to 21st after the bye.
Yeah. And going down the list?
And then Enagbari, he did not change much. His win rate for the edge rushers, 98th before the bye, only and 93rd in the league.
He had a rough year.
His PRP was a little bit better, 96 to 60. So if you look at the edge rusher group after the bye, there are 3 top edge rushers in the league amongst all edge rushers with like over it's like 130 snaps or something like that. Pass rush snaps. Cox, 3rd best in the league. Gary, 18th best in the league. Van Ness, 21st best in the league. So that means they have 3 players
in the top 25.
They just edge 1.
And so they just need consistency, which is a big thing that, and we talked about a little bit, like it was like, is it just strength of competition? I went and looked and like pre-buy, post-buy, and you can argue about, whether or not this is a great metric, but just kind of indicative of like the competition they were going against. The pass blocking grades from PFF, pre-buy and post-buy for their opponents were like within like 1.5, which was like the equivalent of like 18th best to 19th best in the league. So they were going about similar competition pre-buy and post-buy. So it wasn't necessarily just that they had way easier matchups in the second, half of the season. It was about the same. But anyway, you looked at the interior defensive linemen as well, right? They were also improved.
Yeah. So Wyatt was 48th in win rate before the bye, 6th best in the league
after the bye.
Mm-hmm. Kenny Clark, we talked about how he had a down year. I was been worried about, is there a avenue for improvement? He was only 58th in the league before the bye, but 20th best in win rate after the bye, and Wyatt and Clark are similar in the PRP, the pass rush productivity. Brooks went from 52nd best in win rate to 33rd best in win rate. And then TJ Slayton, who is really a run stuffer anyway.
And also
he's
not on the
one
team.
He went down.
And also not on the team. So it's like,
yeah, he went
really
from
matter.
62nd best before the bye to 93rd best after the bye.
Yeah.
But
But every single guy did get better as the season went on, which like,
and some of them substantially
it's better. Like, so if all of them improved throughout the year, what was coaching really the issue? I mean, I guess we'll see. That was something we were talking about. It's like, if they all got better throughout the course of the year, why was like the coach fired? But maybe there's something we don't know where like, hey, they just kind of shadow relieved him of his duties halfway through the year and just had someone else do it.
Did Hafley just take over? I mean, we don't actually know.
No, we don't. Exactly. And, after the bye, they started playing Cox more. So maybe that was part of it as well.
Cox is the secret.
Secret sauce.
Brendan Cox is the secret sauce to unlock the whole pass rush.
Maybe he takes
guys should be all pro.
Yeah, I mean,
we were talking about players better.
Yeah, we were talking about those. Like he did mostly get to play like third downs, so it's like his job was a little bit easier than these other guys. But yeah, so I think overall, just circling back to what Gutekunst said about not feeling like they need to chase a guy. This quote doesn't really do a whole lot for me in terms of like me thinking that they're actually going to have any like. It does not change my opinion at all on whether or not they will take an edge, is what I'll say. Like, I don't think it has any real impact there. But moving on to a couple more, just as we wrap things up here. This was something from, Nate Hobbs. This was a quote on Gutekunst about him, and, both him and Matt LaFleur talked about, how much they liked his versatility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the part from Gutekunst that I thought was most interesting was they liked his ability to move inside and match different receivers. And so my question is, for you is, big deal, little deal, no deal, in like, does this mean that they view him as their corner one? In terms of, when they talk about matching receivers, I kind of imagine traveling with number one receivers is kind of what I imagine with that. Do you think they see him as corner one there?
I don't know about corner one, but I think they really do like the flexibility. And we could see him inside and outside depending on who's out there. I think that maybe here's in three receiver sets, and they're nickel.
This is why I don't think they need a corner. This is assuming Jaire is not
right.
On
assuming Jaire's not. Keyshawn, Valentine, and Hobbs in the slot. Seems like the most likely scenario.
I don't want to give up on Bullard so quickly. I understand why people feel this way, but
so who goes to the bench?
Valentine.
Valentine.
Yeah, Keyshawn, Hobbs outside, and Bullard in the slot. No, Keyshawn and Hobbs outside, Bullard in the slot.
In Bullard in the slot. So then basically Hobbs is full time outside, rather than this versatility playing some of the slot.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is it like something where it's like, okay, we see these top receivers, whether it's Justin Jefferson, whether it's CeeDee Lamb, whether it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these top receivers these days get a good chunk of snaps in the slot, just to give them some more two-way goes, just kind of give some different looks for the for the defense, get them off of those top corners. And so that's why I was wondering, is that what they like about Hobbs and his versatility? Is he can still go with a top corner even if they move into the slot, and it's not like you need to put a safety on him. And so maybe you're right. Maybe on third downs, Hobbs is in the slot if the top receiver is in the slot. But I don't know. I just feel like all this talk about adding a corner, I'm just like, I don't want to give up on Bullard yet. I feel like he had a fine rookie season. There were some ups and downs. The Lions picked on him a little bit, but he's going against Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's like, okay, that's a tough cover for a corner, let alone a safety. And you could say, well, exactly, like he's not really a corner. And I'm like, I want to see another year of Bullard getting most of his snaps in the slot. Because I think last year you're trying to play him at safety, you're trying to play him in the slot, you're moving him around a lot, you're not really setting him up for success. I want to see a full season, a full off season of him getting to work in the slot as a slot corner at the NFL level before I'm like, okay, let's add a corner and just bench him. Because realistically, he's not playing at safety anymore. McKinney's going to be there, and Evan Williams is going to be there. Evan Williams was better as a rookie than Bullard, barring injury, obviously. So the only avenue for Bullard playing is in the slot. And so if you draft a corner in the first round, you're just benching your second-round pick 1 season into his career. Or, as someone suggested, you like play Bullard just on base downs, or in big nickel, rather. And so he's only playing 30% of the snaps, maybe. I just don't see it. You're not really benching him, but you're pretty much just limiting his role to the point where it's like he's barely playing. And I just don't think they're going to do that to a second round pick who they liked coming out of college. And I wouldn't do it either. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think it's too early to give up on him. I wonder where he's going to end up with a number squeeze, though.
That's why I'm thinking I don't think they need to take a corner. And I think they're going to play Hobbs more outside than even we expect, which I think we both expect him to get a good chunk outside, but I think he might be just primarily your outside CB1. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I guess it also depends on how Hobbs does in that role, because it's never been his full-time role is to be an outside corner. He's been mostly a slot guy. And we've talked about that a little bit. You can go back and listen to that episode where we do a full breakdown, full deep dive into Nate Hobbs and how he's looked in the slot, how he's looked outside, what those numbers look like. I guess we'll see. I don't want to give up on Bullard too quick, because I thought he had some nice flashes as a rookie. All right. Moving on to a couple more questions here. This one was about the linebackers, or a couple more quotes, rather. Gutekunst on the linebackers. And this was kind of in response to essentially, they were like, well, you're mostly going to play 2 guys there. And are you really going to bring Quay Walker back? What does that mean for Hopper? Is he going to get a chance to play? You already brought McDuffie back. But the quote was, quote, I think we played 3 linebackers more this past year than I expected us to. I also think Jeff's second year, some of the creative thoughts he may have is playing multiple linebackers, end quote. Any thoughts on that? Big deal, little deal, no deal? Does this mean they're going to draft another linebacker? That would shock me, but not be that shocking. Thoughts on that one?
He may have said something about we need more linebackers. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he said at the end of that quote about I thought we got a little thin there last year. We did see them, bring back McDuffie. We saw them bring back Christian Welch. So
basically their numbers are the same as last year. They brought back Welch instead of Wilson. They brought back McDuffie, and they've got Walk. So
they still have Walker, Cooper, and Hopper.
And so maybe we'll see more Hopper. Maybe and
I'd like to at least see Hopper get. I mean, they also asked him about Hopper. They were like, he didn't play. He was pretty much like, he looked good in practice. He looked good on special teams. That was pretty much what he said.
Right, that's kind of what he said. And so we're happy with what he's given us so far. I won't be surprised if they add another late round linebacker.
Yeah, I not at all. No, especially with Walker going into the last year of his deal. We don't know if they're going to pick him back up. They did bring back McDuffie, but we have no idea if Hopper is any good. Welch is more of a special teamer. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm just almost thinking are we going to see a linebacker go maybe day 2? Are they going to invest a higher pick in? Which I would hate. I would hate it, because then you're just giving up on Hopper already. But
and he did also talk a little about specialization of linebackers. When we're in 2 linebacker sets, then those guys need to be interchangeable. And I feel like he probably thinks we already have those 2 guys. Yeah, in Walker and Cooper, and but then they also asked about extending.
But they also asked Walker. Him about Hopper and said, "Do you think his best spot is in the middle?" And he said, "I think all 3 of those guys are interchangeable." And he's like, "I think they need to all be able to play all 3 of those spots." So I don't know. I don't know what they think of Hopper. I don't know what they think of these linebackers. I just know I thought it was interesting that he thought that they might need more of them, and I was wondering if you thought that was a big deal or not for their draft boards.
If he's saying more than they had last year, then maybe they'll draft another one now, and then they'll be carrying 1 more linebacker than they did last year. But I don't think they need a top 2 linebacker.
I don't think they need, but I'm wondering if they think they need.
I suspect this would, the implication was we need depth, because if we need more of them, we don't need the top 2 guys. We don't need, to get better at the top. We need maybe to add another guy.
Perhaps.
I don't know.
All right. And then one more I just wanted to hit you with, on Musgrave. He got brought up a few different times during this, and he's been kind of I would say, forgotten guy. over the course of, the past couple season and a half with, Tucker Kraft's emergence, him really not being able to stay healthy. But he was brought up a couple different times. One, unprompted. They were asking about essentially replacing Christian Watson's speed on offense, and, what that might look like. And he talked about, Brian Gutekunst talked about, hey, we brought in McCole Hardman. He's got some speed. Jaden Reed, I think, can do that. And then he's like, and then Luke Musgrave, has some speed as well. And then Matt LaFleur later was asked specifically about Luke Musgrave and, what they think they have in him. And he's like, well, he's been working out in Green Bay this whole offseason. He's putting on a lot of functional strength. He's great. He's gained some weight. He looks really good. Best shape of his life. It is that season. Anyway, big deal, little deal, no deal. Luke Musgrave contributing more to the offense in 2025.
I think if he can, he hasn't actually he's had like 2 injuries really, but they've been long-term ones.
Yeah.
Is the problem. You're putting on some strength. Like I was looking at, so his bench was like one of his lowest percentile scores.
Yeah, but bench is not a very good measure.
But maybe
of strength, in my
putting
opinion.
on some strength will help his contact balance.
Maybe, because that's, I think, the biggest thing
like
he
the
can't
big thing
turn.
that the big thing that separates him from Kraft.
Yeah.
Is being able to stay on his feet when he gets bumped.
Do you think he can do some of what Watson did in terms of field stretching?
Maybe, because really what you're thinking about is, what does it mean to be a field stretcher? You are influencing the position of the safeties.
Yeah.
As a wide receiver, you're doing it by threatening to beat the corners. As a tight end, you're doing it by threatening to beat the linebacker. Mostly,
do we see him more lined up as a receiver? Is also what I'm wondering.
I don't know if you could say he's going to be a field stretcher if he's going against a corner on the outside. If you put him outside,
Fair.
It's more about the safeties have to be aware of where he is if he's going up the seam, really. And
it might to stretch the field
same,
from the seam, I guess. Yeah,
it might have the same effect on keeping the safety's eyes on him. Not in the same way he's getting down the field as fast.
You just can't let the safety sit at like 15 yards, 10 yards, and like just play.
Right. So you're dragging the safeties downfield because you're running past the linebacker.
He's going to have to.
It might work. It's going to do it in a slightly different way.
He's going to have to make the plays on the ball though. Like that's the other thing. Like, catch the ball.
I got plenty of time to catch up to that guy when he falls down.
Yeah, he's going to be stumbling. That's the thing is like the two deep balls I feel like we've seen him catch were both on leak. The one against the Bears in week 1, where he fell over, then the one against the Cowboys where he did not fall over. But they were both on like kind of, because the first one was the one where the ball bounced on the ground, and then the other one was the one where the Cowboys just lost him. So it's like he hasn't really like had like an actual, I feel like, deep shot that I've seen in these games.
What about that one up the middle? He had a nice play up the middle his rookie year.
Was that against the Broncos?
I can't remember who it was against.
I mean, he had a touchdown against the Rams, but that was on that kind of also like, fake left, fake right, always wide open in the middle of the field.
He was wide open in the middle of the field.
But anyway, I guess it's going to be hard.
Nobody went with him.
And it could just be those are the ones that stand out in my mind, and I'm forgetting a couple. But anyway, I was just thinking what you thought about Luke Musgrave contributing as a deep threat. No, I do have one more, actually. When asked about, playmakers in the offense and, replacing Christian Watson, replacing that explosive aspect, unprompted, brought up Marshawn Lloyd as, a guy that they're excited about, using. Big deal, little deal, no deal, him being brought up. And what are the odds of him rising up the running back hierarchy? Because we know they like Emmanuel Wilson. We know they love Chris Brooks. Do we think he has a chance of moving up to a running back too?
Yes. He's the fastest running back on the roster.
Most explosive, yes. If he can hold on to the ball. But
he needs to hold on to the ball.
And that was the thing coming out of college.
Because he's like fumbling and getting hurt.
Yeah. They sent him to Wisconsin, right? Didn't they send him to UW Madison to have his hamstrings looked at? I believe they did.
Same thing?
I think they did that in season last year. Yeah, if I remember
because
correctly.
He only had like one carry,
maybe like
preseason,
2,
and one carry in the regular season.
Yeah, he had like a handful. Yeah, it wasn't very much. I can look it up really quick. But do you think that they're going to try and emphasize him?
I think they're going to try to emphasize him within the running back room. What that means in terms of emphasizing him within the entire offense as like a way to get explosive plays, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Over the course of the season, he had 6 carries for 15 yards.
6.
Yeah. So not a lot. And one catch for 3 yards. It was all against the Colts in week 2. But he did have one massive run that was called back for a hold. So there was that.
His best play of the season didn't count.
Yeah. Which, that's tough blow. But anyway, so you think that he is going to have a shot to pass Wilson and Brooks on the depth chart?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so. I expect it. In fact.
Do they keep 4 running backs?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? So like, which one of Wilson? If you're calling it today, and assuming they don't draft a running back, which they might, Wilson, who's making the team, Wilson or Brooks?
Probably Wilson.
Really, I was going to say almost certainly Brooks. I think Brooks does. I think Brooks does things. I think Wilson and Lloyd are a little redundant in terms of they're both like pure running backs, like just more like actual like hand the rock off to them, change of pace guys. Whereas like Brooks, like I mean they almost never played Wilson on third downs last year. It felt like Brooks got almost all the third down touches. He was even taking third down work from Jacobs. And I think that, you know, they'll just take the Wilson
discussion. I don't have a real horse in the race. I don't know.
I don't either. But I just think Brooks does more things that neither Jacobs nor Wilson do, and Lloyd doesn't do either.
Yeah, so, but Wilson was like really good.
Very efficient. Very efficient
as a runner last year. One of the best in the league, actually, in terms of efficiency.
Maybe they can get like a 7th for him. Probably not, but you never know. But anyway, I think that's the last of the things that I wanted to ask you about from the owners' meetings. Is there any other thing that you wanted to touch on that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
Boy, I got so many freaking notes in here. McCole Hardman, special teamer or receiver?
Special teamer. Next
special
question.
Teamer.
Yeah. Someone I think he's not even guaranteed to make the team, in my opinion.
Oh, one thing we didn't mention is like Love did not need surgery for his knee.
Yeah, that was news, I guess. That wasn't necessarily anything that I wouldn't.
Right, that was more news.
Yeah, but yeah, that is an important thing to note, is that is some good news coming out of the owners' meetings. So that's definitely a plus. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think there was too much more to glean out of these. It was mostly a lot of platitudes. Talking about
here I have something. So last year they ran more than they threw it the first time since 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be making noises like,
we're going to run even more, double it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
I think it's a mistake, but I understand.
Big deal, little deal, no deal?
Medium deal. I would say I would have liked to see, because I thought the running game was good last year. And maybe too much of the weight was on Josh Jacobs' shoulders. Maybe too much of that was like, okay, Jacobs needs. I don't know. I'm of two minds about it, because in one case I'm like, okay, the running game was fine last year. Did you really need to invest that much more, or could we have invested in improving the passing game? Because I think the passing game was what really faltered last year at the end of the season. The other half of my brain is thinking, well, in the past, what's really blown the offense up, and when the offense has just not worked, is when the running game dies. And so if you want to really insulate the offense from full-on catastrophic can't do anything, if you can get the running game to a spot where it's never going to truly fail, you set a higher floor for the offense. And so I'm of two minds about it. So I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking. What were you thinking?
It seemed like, are you guys with the times? Or maybe we're not with the times.
I was going to say, I think the league is moving to running more. Is moving more to running.
So maybe that's just the way the league is going now, and the modern passing offense is no longer modern.
And they asked Gutekunst about this, and he was like, "Well, I think we need to be the type of team that can do whatever we need to do when we need to do it." And I guess my response to that is, it's like, well, the passing game was really like, if you want a balanced offense, the passing game was falling behind the running game. So the passing game needed more help. And there's still the draft, there's still plenty of time to make some additions there. But that was just my thought. It was like, well, the running game was fine last year. It was the passing game that could not get anything going the second, really back third of the year. So I don't know. That was kind of my thought there. And you're missing your wide receiver one. So that's also a problem.
Right. That's the other problem that I think they don't talk enough about in the front office. Like, yeah, we got pass catchers. You're missing one.
I think they need to feed Reed a little harder and feed Kraft a little bit harder.
I didn't realize how little. I think I saw somewhere over like the last 5 games of the year, Reed only averaged like 30 yards a game and just a couple catches.
Yeah, and part of that was on him. He had a good number of drops and, struggled to separate from man. But I think they need to get him some more design touches underneath and, some more ones where he's catching it with a bit of a runway, I guess is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I guess we should wrap up because we're going a little long here. I thought this was going to be like a 45-minute. We're over an hour. We're well over an hour.
I'm sure we got some dead time to cut out of there.
That's true. But anyway, wrapping things up here. Thanks for listening. This has been our breakdown of the owners' meetings, talking about what matters, what doesn't matter, what are lies, what is smoke, what is fire, et cetera, et cetera. What can we glean from these interviews with Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur when it comes to looking at the Packers draft and looking at the Packers in 2025 and what their approach is to roster building and who's going to be big-time contributors in this upcoming season for Green Bay, because they're going to need some guys to step up with, the absence of a few key players and needing to make some additions and some improvements if they want to get to where they're going. But anyway, thank you again so much for listening. If you like what you heard here today, follow us on Blue Sky at Father Son Packers, subscribe, like, leave a review, follow us on, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, tell a friend. We would really appreciate it. We'll be doing an episode every single week for the entire offseason. We'll be especially gearing up and ramping up our draft coverage. We'll be doing mock draft Mondays every Monday on Blue Sky. So once again, at Father Son Packer. But anyway, thank you again so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.